Hey, what's happening? It's Robert Phoenix, broadcasting to you live from Austin, Texas. Yeehaw! Jihad! So, how is everybody today? Yes, we got the show off. I hit the live stream right at 9:11. Clicked it at 9:12. It's the 9/11 memorial broadcast, which we'll be doing every day now until they shutter the doors and windows here at the worldwide headquarters of Free Association Radio. That's not going to happen anytime soon. As long as I can help it, we're going to be blazing on, banging the drum every single day. And thank you for all of your support and listening. The comments on YouTube are starting to pick up a lot. I like that. I like some of the commentary, some of the dialogue, some of the back and forth. Two things from yesterday's show that I need to correct. The video channel that I was referring to is In Truth by Grace, not Truth by Grace. Apparently some kind of algorithm that YouTube has established does not allow you to kind of type in Truth by Grace and get to go where you're going. Apparently it's not that smart yet. Although maybe it's a lot smarter than we give it credit for, and it's just taking you down a wrong alley or pathway. In Truth by Grace. And apparently this guy in Vegas is not the son-in-law or brother-in-law or whoever of John Podesta. That apparently is a red herring. Krause, the FBI agent, said we need to move on from that. Move on from that. So 2 corrections from yesterday's show. And thank you for the people on the comments page. You know, see, the great thing about this is we're not in this alone, right? I'm not just doing this by myself. There's a group of people out there. They've got shows, man. They've got shows. They've got YouTube channels, and there are people that listen and partake of the content. And they participate on the questions and answer side, the commentary side. So we're not in this alone. This is a great kind of experience that we're building together. This collective mind that we're forging. And it is not a Borg mind either. There's something very interesting happening going on with the internet, and you're part of it. I was on Jerry Abland, or Jerry Cthulhu, also known as Jerry Abland, but Jerry Cthulhu. I was on his show last night with Nish, and it was all about dreams. You can find that on YouTube, I believe, so I'm going to try to track it down, and I'll post that up on Facebook. Really interesting show, and Jerry, very fascinating guy, did a great job putting together and narrating and kind of moderating, and Nish was really an interesting person too. So if you're interested in that, I'll post that up on the Facebook page today. But there's just a plethora, an explosion of awareness and consciousness and learning. And it's really, really fascinating to watch. I mean, you can go now onto YouTube and you can find a video by the conscious atheist, right? And it's posting all kinds of Stephen Paddock, false flag stuff. And then you can go over to another channel, which is a born-again Christian channel. And they're like laying out their version of the same event, and there's intersecting nodes of information and intersecting nodes of confirmation. And it's really fascinating to watch, to see that these two camps, who are theoretically, excuse me, theoretically diametrically opposed, wind up covering the same material and uncovering it for perhaps the same reasons, unbeknownst to them, which is awareness and truth. We talked about truth last night on the show, and I'm 57 years old, and Jerry and Nish are, you know, he's a little bit younger than me, and then a lot younger than me. But we both, all three of us, came from an era where this whole notion of truth was this sacrosanct kind of commodity. If you go back into the 60s and you look at the movies of the 60s, It's all about being true, man. It's about the truth. You know, you go into the 70s and you see these filmmakers try to kind of unravel the whole idea of what truth is. But at the end, they're really trying to kind of funnel into this universal constant. And I'll give you an example. People like Francis Ford Coppola, The Conversation, which is his version of Antonioni's Blow Up. And it's about using sound and it's during an assassination attempt. And a guy is out recording something and he picks something up that has nothing to do with the thing that he's picking up. And it leads them into this kind of, strange labyrinthian world and uncovering what the truth of that situation is, or behind this assassination. You get into even something like Taxi Driver by Martin Scorsese. And he has a character, Travis Bickle, for all of his, really screwed up and messed up tendencies. Bickle is trying to grapple with truth and morality. Paul Schrader wrote the soundtrack, and that's always been, wrote the script, and that's always been a theme in Paul Schrader's movies, is getting to the core of truth and morality. Of course, he comes from, I believe, Minnesota, is a Calvinist, and has his own kind of moral equation that he's working out. But this was part of a generation. This is what art was working out during the 60s and the 70s, is this whole notion and idea of truth. Getting to it. Uncovering it. That was a time when actually the left would believe in things like conspiracy theories. Now, I'm not talking about the left like Bill Ayer's left, but there was this idea and notion that the government would infiltrate groups, COINTELPRO, whether it was the Black Panthers or the Weather Underground, or whether it was sort of the distribution networks of drugs and LSD. This is what the government did, and they saw this, they understood this, that there was a level of conspiracy. These were the kids that grew up on Kennedy and the very difficult and unanswered questions surrounding the Kennedy assassination. So truth was a specter and a black cloud in some ways that hung over a period of time. And then we got into the 90s. And there was almost, remember how I was talking about how we have this process of the revelation of the method, where they give you something. They give you something and you're like, wow, okay, we've got it here. We found the thing. But they're really giving you not much at all. It's kind of like somebody who has a big lie, and then they have a smaller lie that they'll tell you. And the smaller lie is a revelation of some level of truth. So you have this correspondence with that whole idea, like, oh, okay, well, they're telling the truth. But what you're getting is a version of it. You're not getting the truth of the big lie. And this happens quite a bit in terms of people in power, media. It's one of these little sort of tricks that they've mastered. So in the 90s, what do we have? We have all this stuff happening with the Clinton administration. I mean, it was a corrupt and absolutely corrupt and grimy administration. It was the Dixie Mafia come to Washington, D.C., powered and backed by the Bush crime syndicate family. I mean, that's what it was. And it was off the charts. I mean, we had Waco. That was going on. We had what was happening with Randy Weaver, and then we had what was happening with the Freeman, and all that was going on. We had what was going on with Atlanta and Richard Jewell, and then there was what was happening in Kosovo, and I mean, it was just crazy during the Clinton era. Crazy. We had Elian Gonzalez, who was ripped out of his home by the federales. That famous picture of the guy with the rifle and Elian Gonzalez in his closet. I'm not even sure that was Elian Gonzalez at that point in time, but let's just say it was for a fact. I mean, there was a lot of stuff happening there. You had Vince Foster, Fostergate, and man, the Rose Law Firm. It was all bubbling up under the surface. Now, there was a lot of free money happening back then because they were releasing money. The interest rates were going lower and lower and lower. We had the internet coming online. NASDAQ was going nuts. People were making money hand over fist. So it was one of those times where, okay, here we go. We're going to supplicate the masses. We're going to give them the last drips and drabs of quote-unquote real money, even though trillions of dollars left the country during that time. This is what Catherine Austin Fitts has talked about. And she's not the only one. We had backdoor deals with China. Secrets were being given away, sold. The Clintons were basically, it was like America was for sale, and they were negotiating deals right and left. And so what did we have? We had Monica Lewinsky, and we had a dog and pony show, which started off with Kenneth Starr going down to the Rose Law Firm and looking at all the stuff that the Clintons had. And they had plenty of stuff. Trust me. You didn't have to dig too deep. I mean, I knew what was going on. I knew what was happening with Mena, Arkansas. I was wide awake. And you think if I knew that stuff, that they didn't know that stuff? Of course they did. So Kenneth Starr gets into this. He's like the Robert Mueller of his day, and he's going through everything. What does he come up with? He comes up with Monica Lewinsky. And he comes up with a dress, and he comes up with a blowjob, and he comes up with a cigar. And that's the story. And so what happens is that we have this kind of moral lynching. It has nothing to do with the truth. But it's a moral lynching. Clinton gets morally lynched. He gets impeached. It's a standing impeachment, and he's completely neuter and powerless from that point forward. And he'll do anything, absolutely anything that's told of him, including passing sanctions on Iraq, which happened, bombing and doing flyovers of Iraq, which happened. It was all a setup for what would happen during 9/11. They were softening Iraq's defenses. That's exactly what was going on, because they knew they were going back to Iraq. They knew that 9/11 was going to happen. And Bill Clinton had to do his part in order to make that sortie, that ultimate sortie into Iraq to remove Saddam Hussein, who wasn't even there anyway. That wasn't the guy in the rat hole that they pulled out. Never is. But that's what he was doing. And he did the same thing with what was going on in Kosovo. I've talked about this in other shows. But what did we get? We got the revelation of the method. We got a little bit. Oh, yeah, there's that bastard. Look what he did. Oh, I did not have sex with that woman. And he did. And so somehow we have this bright and shining, gleaming moment of moral justification. But it's all empty calories. It's all empty calories because the machine just kept moving on. The machine just kept moving on. So this is kind of what we talked about last night. And now what's happening with the truth is that there's a whole generation that doesn't give two shits about the truth. I know I sound like the guy that says get off the lawn, but it's true. It is true, because the way that truth now with a capital TRUTH, the way that it's dispensed now is so subjective. That's your truth. That's not my truth. Oh, really? Okay. So here we go. We've split truth into a million different versions. And it can be really bizarre. Totally bizarre. I mean, we've seen extreme examples of this. Like people who are overweight. People who are overweight, they go to a doctor and they're sick. They've got all these things wrong with their bodies. And it never occurs to them that maybe, just maybe, their physical condition and physical state might have something to do with their state of being. But they go to a doctor and they demand that the doctor fix them and give them drugs for their malady. And the doctor says, well, if you lost about 30 pounds or 40 pounds, you probably experienced a little less of this and a little less of that. And don't hand me that. Just do your job. I don't want to be lectured. The truth is, I'm sick. I'm not well. Just give me the thing. I don't need to hear your truth. You see, this is where it's all going now. Everybody's got their version of the truth. Even in the alternative media world. Stephen Paddock, he's ISIS. He's ISIS. He made a conversion. There's ISIS literature all over that room. What the hell is ISIS literature anyway, Mr. Alex Jones? What is it? Do they have ISIS Weekly? Is that what they have? Do they have like the abducted white slave of the month inside ISIS Weekly? What else do they have? Do they have ISIS training manuals? If you are going to be an effective agent of ISIS. Here are the 5 steps you must take in order to achieve ruthlessness and nirvana. I mean, how does that work? What kind of literature are we talking about here? You know, are there inspirational autobiographies now coming out from ISIS? Yeah, my God, we break it down for us. Oh, and there's Antifa. There's Antifa literature there too. Oh, right. Yes. Antifa. Adventures in Antifa. Videos. I mean, this is ridiculous. So now we've got that's a version of the truth that's happening or has happened out of Las Vegas. It's up for sale. It's a commodity, but it's not a commodity that's really all that treasured or valued. No. It's down the list. Oh no. There are other values and commodities that are much more treasured and valued. And one of it is this sense of entitlement and sense of self. Everybody's running around trying to establish a beachhead in terms of self because we've lost this thread and connection to community and the people around us. That was the one thing that really came out for me around New Paracon was actually meeting people and being in the same room with people and talking to people and eating with people and drinking with people and laughing with people. It was great. It was great. It felt like I'd been in a desert for years. And I came into an oasis in the desert. It was fantastic. And this is what's missing. It's totally missing in our lives. And so we have the beachhead of self that's being stormed. And truth is a casualty in this new reality. Whether it's the subjectivity, it's my truth. It's my truth, not your truth. And my truth means more to you than your truth does because it's my truth. Even though your truth may be truer than mine. I mean, if I sit back and objectively say, yeah, you're right, it doesn't matter. It's my truth. Go fuck yourself. This is where we are. The organizing principle of the day is chaos. It has nothing to do with truth. Chaos is the new truth, and you better get used to it. You better be able to serve chaos. Can't serve chaos, you're screwed. You're absolutely screwed. And that's not an easy thing to do, to serve chaos, because on the one hand, you got to hold on to something. You got to hold on to something to get you through it, and on the other hand, you got to let it all go. Talk about a major act of contortion in a lot of ways, but it can be done. And it better be done, or else you're going to get chewed up by the machine if you can't do it. So you better find some faith. You better find a through line through the experience. A lot of humor, some love, some good supports, and your health, which is so critical and important. And that's something that I know all too personally about. So it's a bad week for white guys. Man, it is it is not Clarence Worley week. And if you know what Clarence Worley is, I'll give you a free reading. But you can't look it up on the internet. You just can't do it. Can't do it. Can't do it. If you hear this and you know, oh, I know who Clarence Worley is, I'll give you a free reading. It's not Clarence Worley week. And if you look it up on the internet, that's on you, and you better be truthful. Anyway, not a good week for white guys. There is a long-playing version of an interview with Eric Paddock, who is Stephen Paddock's brother. I highly, highly recommend listening to the interview. It's all over the internet. It is all over the internet. Go find it. It is rambling, chaotic, emotional. There's this piece where he says he was and he stops. He says he was a one-man army. No. That's not what he's going to say. What he meant to say was he was an arms dealer. That's what he was going to say. So Stephen Paddock had a side. Both the Paddocks. The Paddocks were very wealthy. They made a lot of money. Now, the gambling thing is a cover. true that he gambled a lot. He's got apparently a history at all the hotels, and Eric says, just go to the hotels. Look him up. Look him up. He was a very private guy. He wasn't into social media. He didn't post a bunch of photos on Facebook. It was not his thing. Listen to the interview. It's fascinating. Gives you some insight into the Paddock family. Now remember, their dad was a bank robber and wanted by the FBI. And in the interview, Eric Paddock calls his father an asshole. And his mother had to raise 4 kids. I believe they had 2 sisters. They have 2 sisters, if I'm not mistaken. Steve and Eric, I think 2 sisters. Anyway, clearly the Paddock boys were the kids from the other side of the tracks. And even Eric Paddock talks about how he was not a good kid and he got into trouble a lot. And he didn't get into trouble. He caused trouble. And he said, I used to hang out with guys that weren't as smart as me. And so they were the ones that would take the fall. Ooh, that's a really interesting insight. That comes out in the interview. Seriously, you've got to watch the interview. And I'm convinced, something happened to Stephen Paddock. I don't know if he is still in circulation or not. The brother is clearly acting as if he isn't. There's raw emotion. It's one of the most compelling interviews I've ever seen. It's not one of these Sandy Hook interviews. Oh, I'm just so sad. I'm just so sad about what happened. And little Erica was such a wonderful and gifted child. Excuse me, I have to try to wipe the tears away that aren't there. It's not like that at all. This guy is all over the place. It is a brilliant kind of media. You can't script that guy's interview. I highly recommend it. You got to watch it. But it's a bad week for white guys. Stephen Paddock, he's a white guy. He's a white guy with a gun. He's a white guy with lots of guns. Based on Eric Paddock's description of Stephen Paddock's life, sounded pretty good to me. Got to go anywhere he wanted. Said one night they went to Steve Wynn's hotel. He and his son, Eric Paddock's son, and Eric Paddock went in and visited his brother, took him out to Steve Wynn's hotel. He said that they ate thousands and thousands of dollars worth of sushi. And it was all comped. Because Stephen Paddock is a high roller. All he did was pay for the tip. That was it. He just paid for the tip. We said Stephen Paddock would get on a plane. He said that he would fly and travel like you and I would go to, like you would go to Publix. That's what his life was like. Well, that's interesting. He had multiple residences. I saw his role. He had residences all over the place. I paid $3.95. I got it from Intellis. This guy he had money. Where did he get the money? The cover is that he did it by gambling. He was just smarter than everybody else. That's possible. What's really interesting about his description of Stephen is how much he cared. He cared. He took care of my mother. He took care of, he helped my mother retire. He helped me retire early. He took care of Mary Lou. If you look at his chart, he's Cancer rising. And this actually fits with this guy's personality. So Eric Paddock, I would love for John David Oates to do a reverse speech on Eric Paddock. That would be great. But it's a bad week for white guys, and Stephen Paddock is one of them. He's the crazy old white guy. Just couldn't take it anymore. Snapped. He snapped like a dried up old branch and just started taking out his old guy frustrations and rage and resentments on everybody in Las Vegas. Didn't matter that the people he was taking him out on are the people that essentially might have supported Trump, or at the very least the ideals and morals that Trump might have stood for at some point in time. Right? That's a part of the equation they can't really quite figure out, but that's okay. That's okay, because we're on to the next thing. We're on to the California fires. Stick with that. Spend time with that. I wish I had like a team of researchers. That would be so cool, right? Kind of like the Justice League of researchers. I get like the top 10 or 11 researchers, and you just follow this thread and follow this one. Just stay on it, stay on it, stay on it. And then we just, bring this stuff to the table so that people can just get, the clear, uncut, intense, findings of things. This is, I'd love, that would be so cool to be able to do that. Let's go get them. Spend the next 2 months on this California thing. Go as far as you can and rip it apart and find out why these places exploded and the areas around them didn't. It probably has something to do with PG&E. I think PG&E is what Rockefeller or Rothschild owned. Somebody can look that up. I'm pretty sure of it. That's the back end of PG&E. Because they own a lot of these power companies, right? So, yeah, bad week. Bad week. Then you've got Harvey Weinstein. Oh, my God. And now, here we go. The left is becoming the Ouroboros. It's the serpent that is devouring its tail and will swallow itself. This is what's happening now because they've decided that they're going to sacrifice Harvey Weinstein. Yes, he is not a virginal piece of sacrificial meat. No, he's fetid, right? That's what he is. He's fetid and sour meat. He's like 2-week-old hamburger meat. And you pull it out from the refrigerator and you pop it open and you smell it and you go, oh, I'm not eating this. It's the same thing with Las Vegas, by the way. That's how people are reacting to Las Vegas. It is 2-week-old hamburger meat that you take out of your refrigerator and you take a big whiff and that acrid ammonia smell hits you right in the nostrils. And you're not going to make a burger out of that. Can't do it, right? So this is what they're serving up. They're serving up, fermented hamburger meat in Las Vegas, and kind of the personification of that with Harvey Weinstein. Ah, yes. Now they all come forward. Oh, he did this to me. 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 Oh, my God. You people are gutless and spineless, and all you freaking care about is your career, your next opportunity, your next comp. I heard this story. This will give you some insight into the world of celebrity. Not all celebrities are bad people, but they live in a different universe than you and I. True story. Mario Lopez, Saved by the Bell, his birthday the other day, he had his people call the top restaurant in San Antonio. One of the guys was on America's Top Chef. So it's a well-known restaurant. And apparently Mario Lopez's people said, hey, we're going to be in San Antonio over the next few days. And Mario wants to eat at your restaurant. And if you comp him, he'll mention you on Twitter. And so the people at the restaurant got back to Mario's people and said, no, thank you. And it was done. And the next thing you see that Mario Lopez has a tweet for some other restaurant in San Antonio who said, hey, yeah, great, oh, Mario, come on in. Oh, look, Mario Lopez mentioned us. When I go to San Antonio, this is the place I love to eat at. This is the world of celebrity. And these people have been catered to and enabled for such a long, long period of time. Same with athletes. I hate to say it, but it's true. When you get into the world of athletics, you begin to see the disparity between people. When you get to see how certain people are treated versus how other people are treated, it's a rude awakening, an eyes wide open moment. Eyes wide shut moment, not quite, but you get to see it. And if anything, we need to disassemble these structures. We need to tear down these gods that we've erected in our everyday lives. They're not healthy for us. It's always looking outside of ourselves. Always looking outside of ourselves. And I've gone through periods of that. I mean, how many people do you know, yourself included, that were into celebrity A or icon A? And then you drill down and you realize, holy shit, this person is in the game, right? This person is not who they say they are. This person is corrupt. This person is doing things that I'm not crazy about. This person is a gatekeeper. And then it all comes tumbling down. And it's just the dominoes just fall. And, who's ever left standing is probably somebody who's not very popular, to be honest with you, because they don't get promoted. So this is the world we're living in. And now, oh my God, now we've got Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. Now they're under the microscope. Oh yeah, these are your liberal, progressive heartthrobs. These are the guys that will go out and march for women's rights and shout down Trump. And they will say, we don't want those damn guns. Get those guns out of here. Guess what? They're pals with Harvey Weinstein. But we're not hearing any of that from Chuck Schumer now, are we? No, he's not going to take the fall because Harvey Weinstein has been offered up as their sacrifice. But you can see a consistent pattern, can't you? You can see it's Matt Damon and Ben Affleck and Harvey Weinstein and Stephen Paddock. And now we begin to put together the collective profile. And the collective profile is the white guy's a bad guy. Can't trust the white guy. Look at what they do. They rape, they grope. They kill. They kill 50 people, injure 500. This is why they need to be removed from society, because they're evil. See, this is the message. The problem is that they're consuming, they're eating their own. And when you get to that point where you're eating your own, your social agenda is in big trouble. Big trouble. Because you are cannibalizing your position. You are cannibalizing any kind of cachet. And it doesn't take anyone, it doesn't take a lot to sit back and just gawk at this and say, this is kind of amazing in some ways. Another interesting little side note, just for contrast's sake, right? For contrast's sake, Terry Crews. You might know Terry Crews. He's on that police show. Was it Vegas 911? I don't know. It's one of those police shows. Andy Samberg. I don't keep up with these things. He's also the Old Spice guy. He's got big biceps, right? He started off, I think, as a football player and became an actor. And he got his break on that TV commercial where he was the office linebacker. Anyway, Terry Crews comes out and says, well, I was groped. I was groped. Oh, I know what it feels like. But he was groped by a woman, who was an assistant to some producer. Maybe it was Weinstein, who knows. But he was groped by this woman. So now he identifies with women. He self-identifies with women. I know what it's like. And he happens to be a black male. Oh, now he becomes a victim, you see. He becomes a sympathetic character in this tale that's unwinding versus these four clowns, who have to go, number one, I don't know what happened to Stephen Paddock. I don't know if he's dead or alive. I don't know if that guy in the room is Stephen Paddock. I would venture to say it's not. But, there is a rough and tumble cage match for the truth happening right there. But do you see where this is going? See where this is going? It's like, okay, there's a white guy. There's a white guy. Is he going to grope me? Is he just going to follow me out to my car and masturbate in front of me now? Because this is what happens. This is the response, the hologrammatic response in the theater of the Matrix. Oh my God! I bet you that guy. He's got a gun rack. Let's get away from him. Move over. Get a couple lanes away from that truck. He's got a gun rack. Now this is a cheap version of 9/11. These people, they don't understand, because the psychological and the spiritual capital of 9/11 was trauma. It's trauma. It was a massive trauma exercise. And this was, we had these reserves, these psychic and spiritual reserves, and bam, 9/11 happens. And what happens to us? Most people were totally traumatized. They're like, holy shit, oh my God, trying to make sense of it. How could they do that? That was basically 200 years worth of free rides. Right? That's 200 years worth of like free Starbucks, and all of a sudden you don't get Starbucks anymore. 200 years of free cable, and your cable's cut off. You know, so this is what happened. And then the programs get inserted after the trauma, right? Let's insert those programs. And it was the Patriot program. That's what got inserted. Because now we had to sign off and buy into what was going to take place, which was really the start of World War III. This is what happened. Yeah, man, America's good, man. That's when they started singing, God bless America. At the seventh inning of baseball games, you couldn't just get up and stretch. You had to get up and sing the damn song now. That's when, you know, the Army buying in heavy. You don't see the Army commercials anymore. You don't see the Armed Forces commercials anymore in the NFL. They're not there. Because the deal between the Department of Defense and the NFL went away. But that's what you saw. You saw the flyovers, the national anthem, ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da. You're either with us or against us. You know, that was the Patriot program. But it was the false Patriot program. I fucking hated it. Pardon my language. I hated it. Because I know what the real thing is like. And that was not the real thing. That was a simulacra. And it was feeding off of people's trauma and their need to piece together their relationship to this country in a pre-9/11 level. Pre-9/11 level. This is what happened. And so people bought in. They got the flags. You can't keep us down. We're USA strong. Even though that hadn't been invented yet. So you look at what's happened in Vegas. Guess what? Ain't no trauma left. People have been traumatized out. We have compassion fatigue. We have empathy fatigue. It's gone. It's like you're cranking the battery. There's nothing there. And it gets that, you know that sound? You try to start your car and there's nothing in the battery. That's what's happening. That's what's happening. And now they try to insert the program. White guy, bad. White man, bad. Kill white man. You know, it's like, sorry, there's no gas left in that tank. There's just none. People don't give a shit. Oh, okay. Well, what do you expect? It's Hollywood. You know, you get, that's what you get. You know. Never liked those Affleck guys or David Beard. I don't give a shit. I like the movies. I'm going down to the 7-Eleven. Let me get some smokes. And get myself a 40. You know, people don't care. It's like all the hand wringing. It's all happening on sites like Yahoo or CNN or, you know, all these fossils, all these giant media fossils. We don't care. We don't care. There's nothing left in the tank. But I'll tell you what some people do care about is that they've opened the refrigerator and they pulled out that 2-week-old hamburger that smells like ammonia. That's Las Vegas. So we're not being played. We're not, our signal isn't being moved. And if you are on that side of the fence and you're feeling some kind of phony outrage, God help you. I've got to change my bio on my website. One of the, Elizabeth, who has been a client and sends me emails every now and then with like news tidbitty stuff or information. I get a lot of things from listeners, which is great. Anyway, Elizabeth once called me the Anthony Bourdain of astrology. I got to change that. I have to change that. Because, you know, Bourdain is dating Asia Argento. Bourdain's a trip. And so we're kind of contemporaries. He's about 4 years older than me. But he grew up, he was a punk rocker. He was a rebel. His book, Kitchen Confidential, it's a great book. Because it gets into the dark side of what it's like to be a chef. And, Anthony Bourdain was not some kind of world famous chef. You know, he's not in the same camp as Grant Achatz or anybody who's got like a major restaurant. He's just not in that camp. He cooked at a French brasserie in New York City, and there's a certain style of food that you cook in those places, and he's probably pretty good at that. He can make a good steak and maybe a good green peppercorn sauce and pommes frites. Right? That's what he did. And those restaurants are production restaurants, and you work your ass off, even though it has this semblance and veneer of civility behind the curtain. If you've ever worked at a restaurant, I've worked at plenty of restaurants. Man, they're a trip. You meet some real characters in restaurants, and some of them are quite dodgy. I could write a book about my restaurant experiences. Anyway, so Bourdain, because Teeth on That is a good book. It's like, wow, man, here's a guy that's real. You know, this is not Paul Bocuse. This is not James Beard. This is a guy that snorts coke and, you know, gets blowjobs, you know, at the restaurant. It's interesting, right? So it catapulted him, put him on the map. And that version of Anthony Bourdain I like. This version of Anthony Bourdain is ridiculous. He's ridiculous. And it was really interesting watching his evolution. I'm sort of like veering off a little bit here. But you can see his evolution through his shows. He meets his wife, who is, I believe she's from Corsica. Pretty sure. I know she's Italian. But you can see them, you know, through the shows begin this connection. And this woman is abusive to him. She's kind of abusive. It's like, why would you marry somebody like this? You can just tell she didn't. It was just weird watching their relationship and connection online. And then they have a daughter together. He got married to her, has a daughter. And then she starts to take up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And she winds up going to Brazil and studying. I mean, this woman really gets into BJJ. She goes from kind of this, you know, foodie consort to being this ass kicker. And then their marriage is over. Right? It's done. So he winds up with Asia Argento. And immediately he virtue signals. As soon as this thing happens. Because if Anthony Bourdain has done anything untowards any woman in his life, which is probably possible, even if it's misconstrued, right? Even if it's misconstrued, he's got a virtue signal, and he probably believes and loves in his girlfriend, and it's loyalty, and I get that. You know, it's actually a pretty good quality to have, right? But he virtue signals immediately and says how much he loves her, and you know how much he's proud of her because she's coming out now, and she was groped or raped or whatever by Harvey Weinstein. So all of a sudden, Bourdain's a good guy because he's checking that box. He's on that side of the ledger sheet. It's just fascinating to watch, but it's also kind of revolting. I get it. You know, did he have to come out and say something? Why couldn't he just keep his mouth shut? You know, why couldn't he just kept his mouth shut? Why did he have to insert himself? Because he's Anthony Bourdain? Right? Is that the reason why? You know, if somebody came to me, look, I have a Facebook friend. Her name is Jane Piper. Okay, I'm going to mention Jane's name because she's a public figure. And Jane was raped. She was raped. And she went and she found out her, you know, the guy who they found him. They got his DNA. They got the DNA off of her, and years later they found his DNA, and she went back and they tried him. And she confronted him in court. Who does this, right? Who does this? Jane's name should have been, and for a moment it kind of was for a minute. Like, it was like, wow. Women don't do this. They don't do this, but she did, right? That's a person, you want to virtue signal towards somebody, you virtue signal towards that. Because she's not anybody that's remotely famous or powerful or invested. No, she's a person who'd been violated, and she went back to the scene of her crime, right? Which is the guy that did what he did. She confronted him. You know, you want to virtue signal towards that. bad week for white guys. Unless you're Anthony Bourdain. In which case, you get to piggyback on your girlfriend's misfortune and her coming forward. And the list is piling up. Here it comes. It's the Cosby effect. And you see now what's interesting. From the level of duality, you have Bill Cosby, Harvey Weinstein, black and white. Black and white. So you have the duality effect coming into play as well. Ah, yes. We couldn't have Cosby without the corresponding correlative. Yes. The subjective correlative. Anyway, we're still here. We're still standing. And I haven't done the clone Trump stuff, but I will. I will do clone Trump. I may save that just for the Friday forecast. Just because there's so much to talk about right now. There's so much to talk about. I'm going to save the clone Trump stuff because we're going to go down a rabbit hole. I'm just going to blow this thing out. I'm going to blow it out. I'm going to have a big production number on Friday, and you better be there for it. Of course you don't have to, because it'll be on YouTube, right? Ah, let's all take a deep breath. Come back to our center. Come back to our deep center, because the center is everywhere. Yes, we are the center and we are not the center. But come back to it anyway. Because we all now must go into our day and interact on a level of truth and authenticity. But try, do your very best. Do your very best to anchor some really objective, eternal truth inside of your life and inside of your day. Something that is immutable as we move into Jupiter and Scorpio. Fixed sign, right? Let's expand. Let's expand into the depths, the scorpionic depths. Let's get through, expanding through depth. That's going to be the key phrase for Jupiter and Scorpio, expanding through depth. Oh, by the way, you folks who have been asking about the forecast with Regina, I'm going to be doing one next week. Regina's got a new format. It will not be on Gaia. It will actually be on YouTube. And Regina and I are going to be getting together, and we're going to have our chat next week, and that'll be up really quickly, which is both good and bad. I liked going to Colorado. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed staying at the hotel, and Boulder's got really great food. It's got amazing food. It's a foodie town. I like that part. I'll miss that. But the good news is that the turnaround is really quick, and I still get to do something with Regina. Also, check out astrolata.com. I'll be doing a webinar on the 28th, and it will be on Saturn in Capricorn, which is going to be a very, 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 very important time. It is the 3-year ramp up to Saturn in Aquarius and then Pluto in Aquarius, which is the birth of the new age, the dark new age. All right, boys and girls, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart for you listening, and leave comments over on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube if you haven't subscribed. Tell people about the show. They may like it, they may hate it, but they'll always have something to think about. Use your head.